Hey fans, check out my YouTube page to relive 8 years of After Hours. See movie stars, playmates, and a who's who of talented individuals. Check us out at www.youtube.com/AfterHoursTC. And remember, here at After Hours, we never close.
Well, it's one for the money, two for the show, three to get ready, now go.
Alrighty, welcome back from that big-time commercial break. We are in the beginning of January 2012, and what happens in the beginning of January each and every single year, we celebrate the birth of the king of rock and roll, and who better to get the 4-in-1 on the king himself is the king of Elvis everything, the one and the only, the Elvis Expert, Cory Cooper. What's going on, Cory?
Hey, TC, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing, brother?
I'm hanging in there, getting ready for the big celebration.
Now, how old will Elvis would have been this year?
He would have been 77, about the same age as the condom in your wallet.
All right, checks in the mail there. We're talking about Elvis Presley, not Don Rickles here, Cory. Now, why the fascination with Elvis? How did you get started with being the Elvis Expert?
Well, I was always fascinated with him. My family's a musical family. At a young age, around 5 or 6 or so, I must have seen him on TV, heard him on the radio, something. I can't remember exactly when the fandom began, but my mom bought me an Elvis album, and I was basically hooked after that. And then of course, when I got older, you start going through the history of the man and everything that he did, and it was just the impact. As much as it was his music, but the impact that he had on the history of music, just what he accomplished is something that can never be accomplished again. The old cliche of opening up the door for other artists and black music and everything that he did. It's just that enormous impact that allowed that to all happen is something that can never be repeated in music. And he happened to be the single most important person in music history to be able to accomplish that.
So you're trying to tell me there wouldn't be a Michael Jackson if it wasn't for an Elvis Presley?
Well, that's absolutely correct. There may not have been. There's so many other artists as well that didn't even pick up a guitar or get interested in wanting to have a career in music until they heard Elvis Presley. The likes of Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin and Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty. The list just goes on and on and on with that. Even Paul McCartney and John Lennon of the Beatles. I mean, there's a famous quote by John Lennon that says, before Elvis, there was nothing.
Well, there wasn't anything before Elvis as it comes to rock and roll. What did they call rock and roll before Elvis christened it rock and roll?
Well, Elvis wasn't necessarily the person that came out and started saying, that it was rock and roll that he was doing. Rock and roll was kind of a little bit of a music form that had started and been known around certain circles before Elvis, but it was Elvis, of course, that took it to that different stratosphere. A lot of people want to say that rock and roll actually started with a song called Rocket 88, if you remember that song at all. But, what Elvis did with a lot of these other groups that were out there doing that type of music, a lot of them were only local or regional acts. And then after Elvis, of course, came on the scene, a lot of more people got interested in that type of music. So a lot of these local and regional acts ended up becoming, international superstars because a lot of people were like, hey, what's this new sound? They got interested and wanted to find out more, and they started checking out the music of these other artists, particularly black artists, and it really started to popularize the music. A lot of the music back then, of course, was called race records, and it becomes such a popular form of music that famed producer Jerry Wexler started calling went from race records to rhythm and blues.
So basically what you're telling me there is the movie Back to the Future lied. Marty McFly did not start rock and roll?
Yeah, Marty McFly was, well, in the movie he certainly was. But, for a course of actual history, of course not there.
What about guys like Chuck Berry? Did Elvis inspire him?
Well, Chuck Berry was doing his music and doing his thing before Elvis as well. But again, Chuck Berry was certainly helped by the aspect of Elvis coming on the scene. And again, Chuck Berry was one of those people that were doing, it was a local and regional hit, but he became an international superstar with a big breakthrough of Elvis Presley and that type of music being recognized. It was just more accepted then. after Elvis. And if you remember, too, with the history of it, a lot of people, when they first heard Elvis Presley, they actually thought he was black. And, it was such a different time in music, too. We didn't have all these media outlets to know about all these stars and celebrities like we do now. So a lot of times the only thing people knew about an artist was hearing them on the radio.
So was it basically his appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show that rocketed him to worldwide status?
Well, that was an absolute monumental time. Of course, 1956 was such a giant year for Elvis as well, but those 3 appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show certainly put him into that realm of major superstardom. It also helped as well, too, because, Ed Sullivan, was such a pivotal part of music, but for Ed Sullivan to come on and say live to the audience and to America watching and say that, he's a fine, decent young boy, really did a lot to help and further Elvis's career, because so many people were, calling Elvis, he was singing the devil's music, and people were having, record-breaking parties and things like that because they thought, the Elvis's gyrations were obscene, and they really thought he was this horrible, influence on the younger generation. So Ed Sullivan had a lot to do with Elvis being more accepted by making those comments.
Well, he did learn those gyrations from Forrest Gump.
Yeah, that's right. He helped Forrest Gump and all his accomplishments there, didn't he?
Now, who did Elvis get inspired from, other than, the gospel music and whatnot? Where did he get his outrageous looks from? Did he wake up one morning and say, I got an idea?
Well, all the way back in high school, of course, before anybody knew Elvis Presley the way that we know him today, Elvis was just infatuated with that look. He used to go down to a place called Lansky Brothers on Beale Street in downtown Memphis that was known for flashy-type clothes. And, Elvis used to save up his money and from all his various jobs that he did and go down there and buy clothes, even, as a teenager. So that just continued throughout his life. And of course, a lot of the influence he had in the style and the way that he was on stage and everything, obviously the gospel quartets, he loved them. He was also a huge fan of Jackie Wilson. And if you see Jackie Wilson the way that Jackie Wilson moved on stage, you'll kind of see a little bit of that in Elvis as well.
Unbelievable. Now, you're the utmost expert on Elvis. Now, when did you become christened the Elvis Expert, Cory?
Well, hey, boy, thanks for the compliment. You're making my head so big, I'm not going to know what to do here. What happened is, again, I've incorporated over 30 years of being a fan and studying his life and meeting people throughout the years that worked with Elvis, band members, family members, bodyguards, things like that, and so I've really got an educated opinion and resource material when it comes to Elvis, and how the moniker Elvis Expert came about was I came home from work, and I had a career in law enforcement. I came home from work one night after a late shift, and I turn on the radio, and I hear a radio show coming from, and you'll love this, coming from none other than Lexington, Mass.
Unbelievable. A shot heard around the world.
Yeah, and it's a guy on there named Joe Mazza, and still a host today, and he's talking about Elvis, saying some great things about Elvis and reminiscing about things, and he was getting a few facts a little bit wrong. He didn't realize that, so I called up. They put me through, and I talked to Joe for a few minutes, and it went real well. He liked it, and I said, hey, going to have an Elvis-related show in a few weeks. Would you like to come back? I said, hey, absolutely. So he invited me back, and I started calling me his Elvis Expert, and I put two and two together and went, hey, that's an obvious enough screen name and email and name that stands out. And so I just started using that, and it just started off in that, and that's been about 12, 15 years ago now.
Unbelievable. Now, are you secretly a member of the Memphis Mafia?
No, that's a club that nobody's ever going to be able to get in again. That time has passed, and those guys are. There's just a handful of those guys, and sadly a few have passed on over the years. But that's a very unique club that what's there is what's there, and there's never going to be any more members.
Unbelievable. Now, we have to talk about this, or my fans will be very upset. We're going to go back to August 16th, 1977. Should I call Jesse Ventura? Is this a conspiracy theory? Elvis, is he alive? Is he dead? Is he in a Burger King somewhere? Give us the facts, Elvis Expert.
Well, sadly, folks, Elvis passed away on that early morning of August 16th, 1977, and there is, never has, and never is going to be any evidence that's going to suggest anything even remotely otherwise. We can thank overzealous writers and the tabloids for all those silly rumors of Elvis being alive, but there is absolutely nothing out there that even remotely suggests that Elvis faked his death.
Now, what about those people at the Burger King that saw him in like 1988 when that record came out in the magazines?
Well, it might be a little bit of, maybe they had a little bit too cholesterol going on there in their lunch, and, they were, having a little fantasy going on there.
Now, basically, who do you think really came up with this rumor that he's alive?
Well, there's a few different things that kind of culminated to add up to that whole story. There was a lady that, don't even necessarily won't even say her name to give her any promotion, but she had written a book that was a fantasy book about a singer that comes back to life, and so of course that kind of helped people along with these rumors. The tabloids kind of started a few things here and there, and it was the whole sum of the whole that came about, and people glommed onto this, and of course the media started loving these outrageous stories, and here we are, all these years later, and still seeing all these stories and new claims every once in a while of a long-lost son or daughter or Elvis being spotted somewhere, and it just kind of never seems to end,
Well, didn't he have CIA connections?
No, and see, that's another thing. There's so much misinformation out there. There's a fantastic book from a colleague of mine called Elvis Decoded. The author's name is Patrick Lacey, and what his book does is goes over a lot of the myths and misinformation that's out there about Elvis and discusses how it came about, why it came about, and explains, how silly this all is. And the CIA stuff and everything, Elvis was infatuated with law enforcement, and he collected badges. And he was, an honorary deputy in a bunch of different cities and counties throughout America. And there's also the infamous story where Elvis went to Washington, D.C. and met President Nixon. He went back there because he wanted to get a federal drug enforcement badge. And, back then it was called the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, which later became the DEA. And, and Elvis got that badge. And but by no means did that mean that Elvis was going around on sting operations or working for the federal government as a special agent at large. In Elvis's mind, he might have thought that that's what he was doing and working for them. But these were all honorary positions that didn't necessarily bestow any law enforcement type powers to him.
But theoretically speaking, Elvis had the cash and all the fame and fortune. He could have pulled this off if he wanted to.
Well, it would have been such a massive operation to undertake, and Elvis was not as well off monetarily as people might have thought when he passed away. Elvis was a big spender. We all have heard the stories of his generosity, and as well, he was also not a very big investor. And so Elvis, he had a little over $1 million in a checking account when he passed away. And other than the Graceland estate there in Memphis, Tennessee, a little bit in his music publishing and a home in Palm Springs, that was about it for the estate. So, Elvis, by today's standards, it was certainly no huge estate that was left, $3-4 million, which, of course, to the layman is a big estate. But for somebody to the caliber of Elvis, that certainly wasn't what you would think would be a lot of money. So, the whole scenario doesn't make sense anyway. I mean, if Elvis was to have left, this life and take on another life because of the pressures of being such a huge celebrity, wouldn't you think that going around for the next 35 years would be more pressure to have to hide and be somebody else? So, the whole scenario doesn't make sense. And all the people that it would have taken to undertake such an operation, from ambulance personnel to police to doctors to funeral homes to, I mean, you name it. I mean, there's just no way that it happened.
Well, the person that has benefited the most after this is Priscilla and his daughter, Lisa Marie. How much money have they made since he died?
Well, the estate continues to make about $40 to $50 million a year.
50 times of what he had in his pocket on the day he dropped dead.
Yeah, and so, and you got to think, too, there's always new things coming out. And, in 2005, I believe, 2006, Robert Sullivan, the man that owns CKX Entertainment, who owns American Idol, he bought an 85% stake in the image and likeness rights of Elvis Presley from Lisa Marie. And so, I mean, they're still doing well because they have that 15% stake. But for the majority of the image and likeness rights, still Lisa Marie doesn't own anymore. Now that didn't entail in the estate itself. I mean, she retained, all the property and the home and all of that. But they sold that off for $100 million in 2005.
I mean, the conspiracy theories will go crazy because at one point in time, Michael Jackson was the son-in-law of Elvis Presley, and the same situation happened to him. He's making more money now dead than he is alive. Yeah,
and how ironic is that? And also in the last couple of years on the Forbes list of the biggest money-making deceased celebrities, Michael, of course, has taken over the number one spot, and Elvis has dropped down to number two. But for the majority of the years that Forbes has done that list, Elvis has been at number one.
Now, you've been a fan, like you said, almost lifelong now. Who do you think is the greatest Elvis impersonator of all time?
Well, I think without a doubt for me is a man named Doug Church. He's out of Indiana right now. And vocally, I don't think anybody touches him. Just fantastic vocals. He's able to keep the powerful vocals and the Elvis tone. And I don't think there's anybody better out there. I mean, there's a lot of great guys out there, and believe me, there's only a handful of guys out there that I think that can actually pull them in an all-around Elvis show and have it professional enough. And Doug Church is certainly the tops in my book. I just don't think anybody can get better vocals than what he does.
Mine personally is the Honky Tonk Man.
Well, I would think so, TC, and that fits perfectly with you.
Thank you very much.
And it looks like you have a little Elvis going on yourself there with your style there, with your sideburns and the Elvis shades you're styling there.
Only copy from the best, right?
Well, hey, there you go.
Now, when he was alive, were there Elvis impersonators around? Did he actually get to see anybody? I know there was a story that Andy Kaufman actually traveled out to Las Vegas to do his impersonation in front of him.
Yeah, and Andy says that he met Elvis as Elvis was, going through the back rooms through the kitchen of the International or Las Vegas Hilton, either on a way to a show or after a show. And he said he snuck into the kitchen and saw Elvis, walking by and actually spoke to him for a second or two. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't know if it's ever been confirmed. As we all know with Andy, you never knew if it was a real story or not.
He could be on the same island with Elvis right now, for all we know.
Well, they could be, and who knows, but yeah, I don't know if that has ever been a confirmed story or not. But yeah, there were a few Elvis impersonators going in the business when Elvis was actually alive. There was a man named Alan Meyer who went by the stage name of just Alan. And he did really well for himself. He had a big show in Las Vegas, and he actually had a TV special that was produced by Dick Clark that was going to be shown on ABC. But about the time that they had it scheduled to be shown, the actual Elvis Presley passed away. And that show just kind of went to the side and fell through the cracks and never got shown.
Now, did you ever get the chance to see Elvis in person?
No, I never did. I'm old enough that I could have, and he was in, places where I had lived. Over my childhood, but sadly, my parents never took me to see a show.
Now, I understand that you are a consultant on a big major motion picture about Elvis. Give us the 4-in-1 on that.
Sure. It's titled Fame and Fortune. It's being directed by John Scheinfeld, who also did documentaries, one called The U.S. versus John Lennon. He did a big documentary on Nilsson. He did everybody in the business, Bette Midler and Tony Bennett, and I mean, you name it, he has done it, and he's a seasoned professional in Hollywood, and this is his first feature, and it's going to be based on a book titled Elvis still taking care of business by Sonny West, who is one of Elvis's main bodyguards and friends, and another biographer named Marshall Terrell, who has done a lot of books from anybody from Pete Maravich and Steve McQueen to Elvis and, various sports figures. And it's going to be about the relationship between that bodyguard and friendship relationship with a man who was with Elvis for 16 years of his life. And hey, if you would get Philip Seymour Hoffman on your show, tell him to give us a ring, because we would love for Philip Seymour Hoffman to play Colonel Parker in our movie. He would be fantastic.
Really? What about Colonel Bull Montana, my co-host?
Well, Colonel Bull Montana. Well, there you go too. We might want to get in touch with him too. What do you think, TC?
Well, he did like peanut butter and bananas.
Yeah, but the only thing was, though, he didn't have them in a sandwich, though, did he?
Who, the Colonel? He had that in a Big Mac.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah. Well, Philip Seymour Hoffman out there. Maybe we'll have to ask South Boston Jeff, my celebrity stalker, who knows all these people, and we'll get the information out to Seymour.
Yeah. Get Jeff to do some rounds on the streets up there, and get Mr. Hoffman to give us a call and tell him he needs to be a part of Fame and Fortune. See if he wants to play Colonel Parker.
Who do you think would be a great Elvis Presley?
Well, the director and producers of the movie actually want to cast a fairly unknown actor as Elvis. The reason why is they don't want, they don't want somebody that's a major, Hollywood celebrity to play Elvis, because they don't want that to take away from the character that they're playing.
So you're saying Arnold Schwarzenegger's Elvis Presley is out?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. And George Clooney or somebody like that as Elvis isn't going to happen as well. Although if George Clooney called us, I'm sure something can be worked out there, if you know what I mean.
Cory, I've known you for about 20 years now. Why haven't you put my name into the hat? I could play the king.
Well, how about Lisa Ann as Priscilla,
Well, she definitely takes care of it. Let's get back to this little thing over there.
Yeah, I knew you almost tipped and fell off your chair there, didn't you?
Yes, I did, as a matter of fact. Now, TCB, taking care of business. Where did he come up with that slogan, since we're getting on that subject?
Well, I don't know. I'm thinking now maybe even of Sabrina now, somewhere along the way. Sorry, you got me going now.
Little blue pills kicking in there, huh, Cor?
Yeah, well, TC, maybe change your last name to Cialis.
Cialis? No, she was the maid on the Brady Bunch.
Now, I'm sorry there. We got off track. What were you asking me?
Now, the TCB there, taking care of business. That was his slogan, his motto. Now, who came up with that? Was it him, or did he had script writers?
No, actually, that came. Priscilla and Elvis came up with that on a plane ride going back to Memphis, and Elvis had wanted to have some type of motto that described, like the way he liked to do things, and they came up with the TCB for the taking care of business, which of course he made into necklaces with, and the full motto was taking care of business in a flash. The necklaces have the initials TCB with a lightning bolt.
I actually have someone on my program that has a tattoo of that.
Really?
Our in-house resident Elvis expert is Dr. McMurphy over there from England. He has that tattooed on his arm.
Well, Dr. McMurphy, more power to you. That's awesome to hear.
Once again, Elvis expert, give out your 411 so any fan in the world out there can get in touch with you.
Sure. And Philip Seymour Hoffman, give me an email. It's elvisexpert@aol.com. And any fans out there, you got any questions or just have a story or remembrance that you'd like to let me know about, give me an email, elvisexpert@aol.com.
Unbelievable. The one, the only, the Elvis expert, Cory Cooper, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back after this big-time commercial break.
Hi, I'm Sunny Leone, and you're watching After Hours with TC Restani.
Yeah!